Daddy has Spanish cover with you. We'll study Spanish together later.
My
okay?
girl,
Yes.
if she does not change her approach to Spanish, she's not going to pass it.
Please, can I go on the laptop, please?
Can I say no? Daddy said
yes.
yes.
You could go on the laptop all you want. Go in your room, sweetheart.
Thank you, Daddy.
Toodaloo.
Hi, Daddy.
Hey, baby girl. How you doing?
Just on Facebook.
What are you doing on Facebook? Who are you talking to?
I'm just talking to Mandy.
Mandy?
Mm-hmm.
Could you put away Mandy for a second? Talk to Daddy a bit.
Okay.
Let's put away Mandy. You know, I've been thinking. How wonderful my baby girl looks. Relax, 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 relax. Okay? You don't need to move right now. Just stop, stop.
Daddy, please.
Stop.
Daddy, please not.
So you just be
Daddy, please. Please, not sleep.
the mommy's out there. Shut up. Just could you relax, okay?
Just sit.
No, I don't want to hear anymore.
No, I don't want to see her fed up.
No, I don't want to hear the pain and the screams of the young women who have been raped and abused.
I don't want to see sons and daughters being abused by their fathers and uncles.
No, I don't want to hear the cries of the mothers who are holding their heads and bawling for their children.
I don't want to see children who have been abused by their siblings and loved ones and don't know how to manage it.
No, no more. No more. So today on Tobago CSI, we're going to stop the whispers and we're going to start the conversation about the sexual offenses and how it is ripping apart our society.
We're going to look at what makes a happy child, a child who is able to lead their life and make decisions.
We're going to hear from the victims, those who have been directly affected, and the professionals who work with them.
We're going to look at the laws and see how they protect the family, not just the young man and the young woman, but the family as a whole.
So stay tuned as we start the conversation. Okay, Mrs. Archie, welcome to Tobago CSI.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Okay, so today we're talking about the sexual offenses, an issue that's quite taboo in Tobago. A lot of people don't really like to discuss this situation, as we have been told. But I'm happy to have you with us this morning. Could you provide for us maybe some clarification on the extent or the magnitude of this situation?
Well, actually, what I can say is that when compared to 2014, we have actually seen a 30% reduction in our sexual offenses.
Wow, that's great news.
And whether again, it's the fact that persons do not come forward, but with the implementation of the Child Protection Unit.
Right.
Now that unit came on board in June of this year. The general unit, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, started in I think it was April.
Right.
However, the Tobago unit started in June. And so far they've had, I think it's about 13 cases before the court involving children. And they're presently investigating some offenses, and maybe about 20 to 25 offenses that is presently under investigation. We really want to appeal to members of the public, especially and not only in the cases of children, that they need to be more vigilant with young children.
Right.
They need to observe and listen. Listen to what they are saying and what they are not saying. What they are not saying by their body language.
Okay.
Because of the fact that in some of the cases, the perpetrators are members of the household. It may be in a familial relationship, and the child, maybe, let's say it's an uncle, they may not want to report it because it's a favorite uncle.
Yeah.
And that's what the adults do in these children's life. They tend to bait them with money and goodies for them to remain quiet. But the parents need to be very vigilant. I know long ago you leave children with grandparents and you can go.
But that was the support system back then.
Exactly. That family unit. But you now need to look out for everything and everybody as it relates to children, because that is the issue. You know, they are so innocent. In some cases, they cannot speak for themselves.
Right.
They are confused. They do not understand, because if my favorite uncle is doing this to me, it confuses them.
Right.
On the one hand, you are assisting mommy with purchasing my school books or whatever,
Yeah.
and on the other hand, you are touching me, and I'm trying to understand, is this supposed to be like that? But parents need to be more vigilant.
You know, it's interesting you're saying that.
So we're saying, you know, they look for the signs, for the warning signs. Look for bruises on the body. The child may be withdrawn.
Right.
Suddenly the child used to be playing outside with the others, and then suddenly they're in a corner, or even they don't want to go to school. Some of the things, their favorite things that they do, they choose to,
Right.
not to do it anymore.
Okay, so be attentive.
Yes.
Right. So I've discovered that my child is being abused sexually. What do I do?
Okay. I think you shouldn't waste time with it. If you cannot get anything from the child, because in some cases the child becomes so withdrawn that they choose not to even speak.
Right.
You have the child protection unit based at the Old Grange police station that you can call, or you can go to the Old Grange police station and speak to the officers there. And the sooner you deal with these issues, the better, because these issues scar children for life.
Right.
So the child protection unit is there with highly trained officers who are willing to assist. Where it happens, for instance, let's say school teachers. In the school, if you're a teacher, once you have the care of a child for any period of time, whether it be a doctor, a teacher, or a family member, and you are aware that a child has been abused, it comes to your knowledge, and you do nothing about it, it's a criminal offense.
Very good.
So you have an obligation and a responsibility under the law.
And this goes for daycare too.
Once you have the care for any
Right.
period of time, it comes to your knowledge, you have an opportunity, you have a responsibility to report it to the police.
You know, some people say, I may suspect, but I don't know for sure. So I don't want to get the people in trouble, and it's not so. So at what point am I obligated to report that?
Once it comes to your knowledge.
Very good.
So the thing about it is, whether you're not sure that it actually happened, the law says, once it comes to your knowledge.
Okay, so I see the child coming with bruises on the child's skin. I may be at the daycare and I'm going to tidy the child, and I notice the child squirming and grimacing in pain. Is that sufficient that it has come to my knowledge that this person might be?
Exactly, because it may be a child who cannot express
themselves, yes.
So that once you are aware of that happening, you see those signs, and in protection of you too, because it may very well say it happened at the daycare,
yes.
So you have a responsibility to report it.
Okay.
And the police will investigate it.
Okay, that's good. But children are not the only persons who are affected by sexual offenses.
Certainly.
And I've heard stories that we have situations where rape is a matter of concern, right? And that falls under the sexual offenses. Could you tell us what's the situation with that?
Well, we have, as I said, what we have seen is a reduction in rapes, reports of rapes on the island.
Right.
And again, some people may report it, and of course the victim may be a spouse or a boyfriend or a close friend, and for fear of embarrassment or exposure they do not report it. But what I would say is that, again, those matters are treated with strict confidentiality. In the situation where it reaches the court, those matters in the court are dealt with what we call in-camera proceedings.
What in the system allows, can we say, to reassure people that they will be treated in a particular way when coming forward?
A woman's body belongs to her. Despite the fact that she may dress seductively, the fact remains it does not give a man the right to forcefully have sexual intercourse with her. If it reaches the stage as if a woman chooses to go out on a date with you, and she ends up in a cozy situation, she did not decide to have sex with you. If even she decides to, and at the last minute before penetration occurs, she says no.
Right.
If you go further, you would have committed the offense of rape.
Okay, so
once you
no
penetrate her.
is no.
So whether she made love to you prior, she did all these things, and you are saying, well, after doing all of that, I expected that she would have wanted it, and she said no, you cannot. And if you do, you would be committing the offense of rape.
Remember, we don't want to know who you are. We just want your information. Crime Stoppers. It's safe and it works.
I'm Samantha John.
I am Nadia Batson.
The incredible Myron B.
I'm K.I. Chucky Gordon.
Hi, my name is Sheriff.
And we are Freetown.
And I'm urging each and every citizen of our beautiful country.
It's time for us to put a stop to crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago once and for all.
In Freetown, we believe that every citizen has the right to life.
We need to be responsible not only for ourselves but for others as well. I think the only way to counteract any kind of fear is to inject love.
We have the power to stand up, to unite, to stay positive, and to win back our country. Build a culture of lawfulness, peace, respect, love, harmony.
The Citizen Security Program.
Stop the violence and abuse.
Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm.
Stay calm. Stay calm.
Stay calm and start thinking.
Start thinking.
And start thinking.
A message from the Citizen Security Program. Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm and start thinking.
No, I'm not ready for that.
Stop. Stay calm. Start thinking.
Okay, cool.
Later.
A message from the Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program.
One bite. I want to play.
Oh, you can do that, boy. Oh, you can do that, boy.
Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm. Start thinking. The Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program.
When we consider sex crimes as crimes of passion and the intensity of the emotions that are involved, it's important as a society that we understand what are the issues for the individual, the victim, as well as the perpetrator. In order to find out more about this, Tobago CSI will chat with Dr. Errol Phillips, psychologist. So he takes us behind the scene of the abuser and the victim. Welcome to Tobago CSI, Dr. Phillips.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Well, you don't have to go with the Dr. Phillips. I'm the same Mr. Pip. Everybody
same
will know.
Mr. Pip, everybody knows.
Glad to be here and hello Tobago.
Yeah.
I think that the area that you have chosen to focus on is very, very relevant to us here in Tobago.
Well, it certainly is. And you know, it pains my heart when you see, especially the cries of the victims. But I know in this instance, victims has to be used quite loosely.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the range of sex crimes, and you know, from the perspective first, let's look at it from the victim. Could you tell us what's happening with the person who is abused?
The person who is abused would face a number of emotions. Let me see if I could just identify a few of them. There's frequent sadness, tearfulness, crying, so that other people may see this and they would say, I'm all right, but you would see them crying and being sad. There's hopelessness. Okay? The person may have been very bubbly about the future and the goals in life and so on, but there is this overwhelming feeling of hopelessness. There is decreased interest in activities or inability to enjoy previously favorite activities. So you'd see this change, right? You would see persistent boredom, very low energy. You'd see social isolation. They tend not to mix. Of course, people would vary in terms of being extrovert, where they would want to mix with other people, or being introverts, where they prefer a very small, limited circle. We'll see a change in that also. We'll see low self-esteem, guilt, extreme sensitivity to rejection or failure. Here is a person that could have dealt with, you know, you did poor on a test, but these simple things seem to devastate them. We'll see increased irritability. They tend to have a short fuse, anger, hostility even. We'll see difficulties with relationships, if they're in relationships. Frequent complaints of physical illness, headaches, stomach aches, and the list goes on.
Okay, so these are the indicators that we can probably use to help to identify if someone is being abused or not. Is it different at all depending on the type of abuse it is? Let's say if a person is raped, or if it is incest, or if it's like an indecent assault or something like that. Is there any difference in the reaction that you get from the person?
There would probably be a difference, because the perpetrator, depending on the relationship of the perpetrator, the way the person deal with it and the manifestations would be different. So here is a father abusing a daughter or abusing a son. Okay, I mean, this is the real world. Let's get real. Because of the power difference, you know, we find that the way the person would process it would be different, and the manifestations would be different. All right. If you're raped by a total stranger, which is very rare, because sometimes, in most cases, there is a relationship with somebody that you know, the amount of violence involved, all of these things could flavor the manifestations, how the person process it in their mind, and the behaviors associated with that.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand, and for my own information too. I'm an individual. I'm raped for the first time. What's happening with me? What kinds of emotions will be going through me? I'm raped, and I'm raped by someone that I know and someone that I trusted. What happens with me?
First, there's a tremendous feeling of guilt. Because first of all, the way you rationalize it in your mind, you tend to blame yourself, and you search yourself and you say, how did I bring this about on myself? What did I cause? You try to examine your behavior. All right? So you turn the searchlight on yourself. Of course, that is unfortunate, because you are not the guilty party in this. All right? But there is this feeling of guilt, the shame. Then part of our mind would let you know, look, you are not the only person. You probably didn't bring this about. There's another party involved. Gradually, you start to get used to the idea that, listen, maybe I'm not to be blamed in this. All right? Now, when you have processed that and you've come to the point where you start to accept that, then there is anger. I don't deserve this. This is a total betrayal of the trust I had in this person. The anger escalates. So there is it's a Molotov cocktail of emotions with time that the person will go through. Right? There is also the issue of, I am dirty. Sometimes after the rape, and of course we tell people not to wash away the evidence and that kind of thing, but you feel so defiled, so dirty, that people spend hours in the bathroom just washing and to try to bring that psychological feeling that, you know, there is some distance between the event and know and what I am now.
What prevents the person then, if you feel that you've been so violated, what prevents the person from seeking help? Because I mean, we are told that reporting of crimes of passion in this way is very low. What prevents the person from going forward and seeking
One of the
help?
first things is that the same reaction that they had initially, where is I caused this.
Right.
They fear that the first reaction and whoever they report it to would be that same reaction.
Okay. Okay.
They would question me as to what did I do? I must have worn something that would have triggered that behavior, so that I was to blame.
Right. Okay.
They're still trying to deal with the trauma of that whole event. Right. They don't want, and they probably have reached to the point where they've kind of like started to turn the searchlight away from themselves to the other party, and they're going through the anger. They don't want somebody now to turn back that process
on them.
Yeah.
But is there any merit in that? Because, and I'm asking the question because I know people out there may be wanting to ask it as well. Because sometimes you rarely see some of the people who are raped, they are dressed in inappropriate ways, and I'm using that language. They may have gone to inappropriate places. They walk in some dark, lonely place. And sometimes, yes, the real tendency is for us to say, but she or he, they look for that. You know?
You see, and this is, we have to make this very, very clear. An individual has a certain right. They may make poor choices, but it is never correct for a person to violate another human being.
Okay.
Okay? It could never be justified.
So,
and another thing too, in terms of the reporting, I may be trying to push this incident out of my mind. I may be trying to push it. I may be trying to pretend that it never happened. Because I feel if I could push it out of my mind, push it into the subconscious, then I could move on with my life.
Okay.
Reporting it now will hinder that process. It brings it back. It's like a recurring decimal in my mind. I don't want that. I want to pretend that it never happened.
Okay.
I feel that I may be able to come to some kind of closure by pretending that it never existed. So there is the tone between reporting it and trying to put it out in the mind.
Yeah, you know, I didn't consider that perspective. So what do you then say to the individual who is in that position? You know, and I want to add to that, because sometimes you may be brave enough or to make the first report, and there is a lag between when you report and when the matter actually has to be dealt with.
And we find a lot of these matters in the interim, because of that re-experiencing of the trauma. They prefer not to go ahead with it. And we find that a lot of people walk because of that, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, because it is important that we stop the abuse.
You see, so it is very important that you send strong signals to the person, you are not to be blamed.
Right, okay.
You are not to be blamed. You may have made some unfortunate choices, but we're not dealing with that yet. You are not to be blamed. There is nothing that you have done that would legitimize the person violating you.
Okay, great. All right, so let's flip it a little bit and look at the person who is committing the abuse. Because we've heard that on many instances, these persons may themselves have been abused. And so I'm asking, is there any truth to that? And what are the realities for persons who, in your experience, are the abusers?
You know, I'll use an illustration to make the point. A guy was skiing down a slope, and there was one tree on the slope, and he wanted to make sure that he didn't run into that tree. So what do you think he did? He kept his eyes on the tree. And what do you think happened? He ran straight into it. Now, when somebody is abused, let's say, that becomes such a central thing that they are trying to avoid, and all of those factors sometimes channel that person right into the behavior. Because sometimes it was the most formative incident in their life.
Yeah.
You know, it's very complicated. So sometimes the same behavior that they're trying to avoid, it is the same behavior that they perpetrate. That is why abuse is such a critical issue. You know.
Right.
Then of course there are individuals who have other challenges. For example, there are people who cannot perform unless the sexual act is associated with a certain level of violence. You know, they say that okay, and somebody recently gave this illustration on the radio, where they said that this person attempted to rape this person, and the person said, listen, do whatever you want to do, and the person just left. Because you see, they needed the resistance and the violence and the fact that they offered it on a plate.
Right.
They couldn't.
But is that another kind of mental?
So what I'm saying is that person has issues they need to work through, and they need professional help with.
Right.
You see, they need professional help. So a lot of times, sometimes the people who carry out these behaviors and these crimes, they have issues that they need professional help with also.
Okay, so you're saying, I mean, I'm hearing from you in some kind of subtle way that the abusers may very well be victims themselves.
Yes.
So we need to look at both sides when we are trying to treat with this problem.
Yes.
But I am alarmed, and sometimes I don't know what's the right word to describe it, but we're seeing the trends in Tobago, and we're seeing that the trend has been something that has existed with us for quite some time, especially as it relates to incest.
Yes.
And now we are seeing patterns in terms of rape, and we're talking about not stranger rape, but rape by individuals that you know, your partner or your wife, your husband, that kind of thing. What does that say? What is it in our culture, our way of life, that seemingly is promoting or accepting this kind of behavior?
The issue of incest is a troubling one in Tobago. There is a long history in our society here in Tobago. There are other disturbing aspects. It is very prevalent among religious and the high society in Tobago. That is a troubling thing to understand, but one of the reasons would be you may have a girl being abused by her father. The mother becomes aware of it. The mother confides in the daughter that she had to deal with it, and I didn't dead. And my mother had to deal with it, and she didn't dead. So we are sweeping it under the carpet, and we're not addressing it. And there are all the other issues in terms of our laws are very, very strict now. We're looking at a jail term for your husband or the child's father.
Yes.
And you're thinking about the family being broken up and all of that sort of thing. But then what about the child? You actually devastated the life of a child.
Because we're seeing another level of behavior that is happening now, and we're seeing, and one wonders whether all of the angry, fighting school children that we are having now in a generation where it's now open, and people are openly seeing that these behaviors are wrong, want of a better word, and should not be practiced. How does the child who is now aware that what daddy or mommy is doing to me at home is not normal, and I now have to cope with that, as you say, because it has been a kind of generational thing? What do we say to the child?
a lot of the anger that we see in some of these children, and I'm a counselor in a secondary school, the genesis of it is abuse. We have to send very strong signals that this cycle has to be broken. Okay? And I think the laws that have been developed, I know that the police service has a child protection agency. I have asked them to come in and they have dealt successfully with instances, so they are very effective. We have to have zero tolerance for this. When a child discloses that to an adult, it is reportable. If they report it to a teacher, the police has to be brought in. Let the police decide if it's true or not. You don't decide if the child lying or not. Always take it as though it is the gospel truth.
That's right, yeah.
They will investigate it, and if it is not, valid, they have ways to deal with it.
Okay.
We have to protect the children.
So this almost seems as, a kind of chicken and egg kind of situation. I don't know which
That's
one.
a nice analogy.
I don't know which one is coming first. So, and with the generational, I don't know if it's a generational curse that's passing on.
You are seeing the trend from...
You're seeing the pattern.
The child's grandmother had to deal with it,
Yes.
her mother has to deal with it. And now the mother feels, well, look,
right.
I grew up and they do me nothing.
So how do we break that cycle?
We have to bring the authorities into it.
But on another
level, as difficult
level,
as it is, when you look into the future, you may see somebody having to make a jail term. We have to protect our children.
As we continue our discussion about sexual offences, we'll talk to one of our professionals, Mrs. Sharon Gooding-Williams, who will help us to understand what are some of the sex crimes affecting Tobago, like rape, incest, and others. She'll also help us to look for some of the signs of both the perpetrators and the victims.
Okay, welcome to Tobago CSI, Sharon. It's a pleasure having you with us. We'll be talking about not such a pleasant topic though, sexual abuse in Tobago. So I would want to get your thoughts and your reactions about what the current situation is with sexual abuse in Tobago.
And we are speaking specifically about child sexual abuse?
Specifically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, what I can say is that it's pervasive. I work in a children's setting, and the reports are pretty high up in terms of abuse. And when we link with the schools and the other social services agencies, it's significant. It's worrisome.
It is.
It is very worrisome, and especially worrisome in its impact on the children. It's significantly worrisome that it's happening. Okay. Now, if I may define when we talk about child sexual abuse, because some people have different views, well, not views, but definitions, or they have different thoughts on what it is. All right, so when we talk about child sexual abuse, we are talking about any act, any sexual act perpetrated against a child by an adult or an older child.
Okay.
All right, and when I say any act, these acts can include, but not limited to, penetration, sex with penetration, because I think that's how people see sexual abuse.
I think so.
As there must be penetration. No, that's not the only form of sexual abuse.
Right.
It can involve fondling, where you are touching the child's private parts, or having the child touch your private parts.
Okay.
It can be oral, having oral sex on the child, or having the child have oral sex on the perpetrator. And as well, it can involve having the child watch pornographic material.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting that you say that.
Yes.
Right. So given that we have such a wide range of acts that can be done to the child, one would think that some of it seems kind of gruesome, you understand? But yet we have situations where these acts may be performed on a child for years and years and years and years. What prevents the child from breaking out of that situation?
So let me first say all of it is gruesome.
Yeah.
All of it should not, none of it should be happening to a child. But there are several reasons why a child may not say anything. And it also depends on the age of the child as well. So you have situations where the person, the perpetrator, is grooming the child. By grooming, we mean paying special attention on the child, buying gifts, and just paying that attention, all right, making the child feel special,
right.
All right. So when the act actually begins, it's easy for the perpetrator to say, this is another way that I'm showing that you are special, or I love you. So that can be one form. In other situations, the child may be threatened, all right? So if you tell mommy or daddy, or if you tell whoever, I'm going to kill them, or you're going to break up the family.
Right.
The child might be told this is the way that the person shows special love for them, and that it's nothing wrong, all right? And the child can be rewarded as well with gifts, money, clothing, different things. It also happens to where the child may have given cues, and the cues were not picked up by the caregiver, all right?
Yes.
And I know this, there have been children who have said that they have dropped notes. They didn't want to come out and say, but they drop a note, or they tried to say, but mommy tell me she don't want to hear no stupidness. So you know, so that prevented them from going further in terms of disclosure.
Right.
All right. Disclosure also has to do with the relationship the child has with the abuser.
Right.
Because if it's a trusted relationship, and I dare say, Anne-Marie, that, you know, a long time you would tell your children, don't talk to strangers, and don't...
It's not strangers.
It's not strangers anymore.
Yeah.
So it's the relationship that the child has with the abuser that also sometimes prevents them from talking.
Good. Now, I know you hinted to earlier that the effect on the child is significant. How does this affect the child?
Oh, in several ways. The child, first of all, may have feelings of guilt, because remember, the sex is also a pleasurable thing.
Right.
And if the child is sufficiently stimulated and it's pleasurable, somewhere in the back of their mind, they know that it's wrong, but they're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the guilty feeling. For some children, they regress into earlier behavior. So if they had stopped bedwetting, they start to bedwet again, they start sucking their thumb, their sleep patterns and eating patterns change.
Right.
All right, so they might be tossing, they may have nightmares. Okay, school performance drops. Sometimes you find that the child will go to school and the child is always sleeping. Okay, sometimes the child becomes very aggressive.
Right.
Very aggressive, and aggressive to everybody, aggressive to siblings, aggressive to peers. So you see that aggression, and these are some of the signs. Sometimes as well, the child may become introverted, not playing, not showing any interest in activities that they formerly showed interest in. So some of these are the signs.
That
and
you
of course, clearly, if your child develops an infection, a sexual infection, clearly you know that something is happening.
Yeah. How early do you believe that we should start?
As early as possible in the language that the child understands.
Right.
So you can start off very clearly by having the child understand the name of the parts.
Right.
And it would be the name that the doctors would call it.
That's right.
All right.
Yes.
So you have vagina, penis, breast,
yes.
bottom. Okay. And then gradually you introduce new information. All
Yes.
right. And you let the child know that if they are uncomfortable with any touch, that's the key.
The key.
It's not about who is doing the touching,
Right.
you know. It's about whether the child is comfortable or uncomfortable with the touch.
Yes.
So you let the child know it's okay to say if you are uncomfortable with any touch, if anything is happening to you, it's okay.
Very good. And finally, the big question: where do we go with a society? you know, in our society to begin to treat with this issue of abuse.
So we need to have consequences for our perpetrators,
right?
And the law is there for that. I think what happens as well, it's the timeline,
right?
Because sometimes a sexual offense is brought to court and it takes 10 years,
yes.
It takes 8 years before it reaches a conclusion.
Yeah.
All right, so bringing the perpetrator to some sort of to pay for the offense.
Right.
And the second thing would be to educate our parents and our children. Yes. Help them to understand what they need to look for, to listen. Parents need to listen to their children. Parents need to observe cues, any changes in their child's behavior, right. To question it, to look at it, to communicate with their child, to make their child understand that it's okay to talk to me even though it's difficult,
right.
Even though you feel ashamed.
Yes.
Mommy, daddy, auntie, whoever will not judge you.
Yes.
All right, you can talk. And empowering the child to say no when they feel uncomfortable. So don't force them to kiss auntie when auntie comes from the States and they don't want to kiss auntie.
Yeah.
Right? Let them be empowered. Let them make their own choices about who touches them, who controls their body.
I think you've given us a mouthful. I want to thank you for sharing with us today. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Wonderful having me again. And we can
Thanks,
continue these discussions.
Oh, yes, we will.